Hello, my dear listeners of Radio Udaan. I'm your Babuji, Janak, Rajan, speaking to you on the latest episode of the Great Indian Monologue. This is Pongal week, Makar Shankranti week, a week of festivities where we celebrate our joy and show our gratitude to nature for giving us harvest, bounteous or not. Farming community, farmers, though we celebrate the festival with all joy and fanfare, rest of the time most of the farmers seem to be unhappy, not just in India but all over the world, because of the conditions under which they are producing food and the market prices, which is linked to their economic and overall well-being. In India, some 3 years back, our farmers started agitating, asking for minimum support prices for a series of primary produce or the so-called food produce. It started as a small thing and it swelled up in numbers into thousands of farmers rallying with their tractors and pitching camps in Delhi and going for dharna and roadblocks. It was a huge hue and cry from the public and the farmers, but the government didn't even yield an inch. And in fact, in most of the Delhi roads, the security forces actually put up spikes to stop the tractors from rolling in, basically to puncture the tires so the vehicles won't be able to move in, because they were afraid of the traffic jam and the political fallout, if that ever happens. And then, in some places, some untoward incidents happened and some farmers died, and some farmers, they killed themselves, and it was a big tragedy, a huge tragedy. And then finally the government consented to raise the minimum support prices for some grains, but that hasn't translated into any law or any reality so far, though some years have passed by. And meanwhile, in Europe, Europe is considered as a wealthy set of nations. Even there, the farmers have been agitating, and that is picking up speed in the past few months, right from Spain to France to Italy to Germany. The most important and the most recent strike is happening in Germany while you are listening to this podcast, where a lot of farmers, they started blocking highways and roads, and then they started moving towards the big city called Berlin in a very popular square called Brandenburg Gate. Some 3,000 tractors and some tens of thousands of farmers, and they started traveling in the tractors to Brandenburg Gate with the idea of demonstrating to the larger public their plight and their case. What they were fighting for? The German government used to give exemptions to farm machinery, tax exemptions to farm machinery purchases by the farmers. And it also used to give subsidy on diesel, which was used for the farm equipment predominantly. In the last few years, particularly after COVID, the fiscal scenario, the balance of the income for the government and the expenses, it was not really tallying up, and the gap was widening on the negative side. And the government, tried to do some balancing act, but the court intervened and said, nothing doing. You have to fix the gap by dropping or by removing some exemptions and some subsidies. And then the German government decided to remove the subsidy on fuel and the tax exemption given to the farming vehicles. These enraged the farmers and they started agitating, and the agitation spread, and it was soon caught up by the rail network employees. They also joined the strike last week, and it kind of brought down the nation to a standstill. And alarmed by the escalation, the government backtracked in its decision, and then announced some kind of compromises that it would continue the tax exemption on the farm vehicles, but it would have to remove the diesel subsidy, not immediately, but in a staggered manner, in the sense, some percentage this year, and then a part next year, and then a part and the rest of it on the third year. But the farmers didn't like this because they think it is too small and it really doesn't solve the purpose, and they continue agitating. And right now, this big number of tractors and other farm machineries, and the farmers and farm workers, they have all congregated in Berlin, demonstrating their strength and asking for a change. What is happening is, for a country like Germany, which is a developed economy, which is one of the richest in the world, and particularly the growth engine of Europe, the government is so mature. I'm not blaming us versus them. It is the way these kind of sensitive issues are treated by the politicians and the elected governments elsewhere to show the difference or the contrast. The German chancellor, he said, we take the farmers' request to our heart, and we will do something. And then he announced these kind of rollbacks, which was not enough for the farmers. And the finance minister, he went to the site of the agitation. He went to the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin, where the farmers have congregated. He met them and he spoke to them. He gave a speech there. Before he could start, he was booed down by the audience. And then, some of the protesters, they had to snatch the mic from the finance minister and beg the crowd to keep respect, because the government had respected their sentiment and had come down to the venue to talk to them. And then the finance minister, he actually addressed the audience. He said, we understand your problem, but we may not be able to do much because this is a scenario, but we will try our best or something like that. Well, this is not enough, but look at the way the conflict or the agitation is getting addressed in such a developed democracy, where the finance minister had the guts to visit the place, and the people, they respected his presence, and no harm, no injuries. They listened to his speech, and he went back, and the people continued the agitation. And they want these two things rolled back in total. And what is happening is, the German government, like the governments of France and Spain, where similar agitations, they caused some kind of a worry in the minds of the rulers that any such agitation may be exploited by right-wing extremism and activities, and it could easily be diverted from the focus. So they are ultra cautious. On the one hand, they want to make sure that no such things happen, in the sense no infiltration of ideas happen, like some extremist ideas or some separatist ideas. They actually take over the protest. On the other hand, they want to respect the protest. So this is a kind of balancing act they do, all the while warning about the potential danger of such infiltration by extremist elements, which could basically subvert or divert the whole plot or the ploy. And Germany is not alone. As I said before, it's happening in France, it's happening in Spain. Farmers everywhere are feeling the pinch. The irony is, these are not farmers like in our country, who are really poor. The farmers in Germany, they are well heeled. Last year, on an average, the farmer's profit went up by 45%. And if you consider the take home of a farmer in Germany, it is equivalent to a white collar job pay in US and in any other developed country. But still, they agitate because they see the potential fallout of such rollbacks, which would mean that food which could be produced at a lower price somewhere else getting imported into their country, and thereby reducing their future sales possibility. So they are fighting for a scenario which could unfold in the future, while our farmers have been agitating to have control over their own produce. The irony is, unlike the Western countries, Indian farmers, they have been robbed of their native cattle to begin with. The native cows and bulls were removed from the farms, and then their land was taken away. Most of the subsistent farmers, they are the daily laborers now, because to run their family, to provide food, they had to sell the land. because they couldn't earn much from farming activity, because the land was spoiled with relentless dumping of chemical fertilizers over the last 40-50 years, and the soil had almost become dead, if not already completely dead. So they are driven deeper and deeper into debt, and they are fighting for the right to call a price on their own produce. If you really think about it, I'm just paraphrasing a quote by a friend of mine who wrote a book in Tamil about 9 rupees an hour. I mean, this is the wage paid to some farm laborer in a field, 9 rupees for an hour. And her name is Aparna Karthikeyan, the writer of the book. And I'm just quoting her. The only thing that is left with the farmers of India today, is their labor, their physical labor. Everything else have been taken away from them systematically, relentlessly over the last 40-50 years. So while the people down here are fighting for their survival and their right to a good life, a decent life with dignity, the farmers in developed countries are protesting to protect their future profits. And look at the difference in the way that the governments are dealing with the problems, right? I think as a nation, we must realize the plight of our farmers in the truest sense, and every one of us we have the potential to change the narrative in India if we simply start procuring our primary produce from our own farmers in a direct manner. No intermediaries, no brands, no packaging, nothing. It's not a major task. It is not very complex. We just have to move away from our comfort zone to make that initial step. We just have to know a few farmers in our neighborhood who are producing staples and veggies and fruits and so on, and become the customers. Just think about it. The governments may come, the government may go. They may bring in policies which may be pro-farmers, which may be anti-farmers, but at the end of the day, we consumers have the power to change the narrative. This is not like the plastic ban, where the government allows all the companies to use plastic for their packaging and then asks us not to use plastic and carry cloth bags to the shops. I mean, this is not in that line. This is from a bottom-up approach where we are the end consumers. We must be aware of what we consume and where it is grown, how it reaches the market, and how it comes to our plate, and what are the chemicals which go into that, which basically kill the soil in the first place. Awareness is the key, and I really hope and wish that the listeners of this show, they become aware of what is happening on a global level with the farmers' protests and the kind of difficulties the farmers go through everywhere, and particularly in India, so that we could really bring in some meaningful change. Thank you for listening to this week's episode patiently. I am really thankful that we have this kind of a medium where we could exchange ideas and maybe we could bring in some kind of a positive change. Thank you, my dear listeners. I wish you a very sun-filled and fun-filled week forward. I'll speak to you in a week's time from now. Until then, I'm your RJ Babuji, Janak Rajan, signing off. Bye-bye.